Recently, I guess 3 years ago actually, I created a program for Georgetown University's School of Continuing Studies, Center for Continuing and Professional Development. Can't even get it on a business card. It's just, but it's basically a 6-day program on franchise management. And it's 2 3-day sessions. It's open to anybody that wants to attend. And if you want more information, you can go to the Georgetown website or my website. I'll talk about 4 critical areas to focus on that make up, in my mind, the building blocks of a franchise system. What are the growth strategies? On the front end, really, it's that selling process, or in your case, if you're looking to buy a franchise, what is your strategy? The franchise operations, franchisee support, the most important, franchise relations. The franchisor relation with the franchisees, vice versa. It's an integrated approach. No one of these stands alone. When you're looking at a franchise organization, you want to almost have a checklist to look through these 4 areas and see how well they're integrated. If you have an organization, growth strategy is very important, not just for your own, what is your growth strategy, but what's the franchisor's growth strategy that you're buying into, that you're becoming a part of. Single site is the most predominant. When you start to look at franchising, whether you're going to launch a franchise system or own a franchise, the market is predominantly covered with single site, where an individual, not unlike any of you in this room, would go to a franchisor, find out what the qualifications are, become qualified, and buy a franchise. That's the backbone of franchising, and it continues to be so today, although there's a variety of other strategies, growth strategies, that have been evolving and that are growing as well. Some of the benefits of the single site model, certainly affordable, more affordable than some of the other models we'll talk about. It provides, a lot of times when I talk to nonprofits about their interest in owning a franchise, it's primarily to generate revenue to fund their mission. Yet when I asked them this question, which I did last month at a franchise symposium in Florida, group of nonprofit executives, I said, how many of you would like to own a Subway? And man, all their hands flew up. Sounds like a good idea. I said, what do you think you would net at the end of a year if your organization or any of you in this room owned a Subway? What do you think you would take home at the end of a year? And I got from $50,000 to $500,000. They really had no idea. They just see the brand, they see him out there, but they really had no idea at the end of the day, after all that work and investment, what would you take home and put in your pocket at the end of the day? And from my experience, for a franchise like Subway, it's well under $100,000. Okay, so you have to ask, what are your financial goals? Do you want to make over $100,000 a year? Buying, a franchise, you want to look and see, is the potential there? So let's talk about multi-site, and this has grown rapidly. Not only multi-site, but it wasn't too many years ago at a IFA marketing conference where I introduced the concept of multi-concept, where not only do you have multi-site, like multiple Quiznos, which is their predominant way of going to market today, or at least their preferred, but you have a franchisee who owns a Quizno, a Carvel ice cream, and a Gymboree. Because what franchisees found as they got into franchise, they liked the concept, they became good at it, but then they could translate those skill sets to other franchise concepts. So don't think of multi-site as just the same concept. It could be multi-sites, but different franchise concepts. Again, there's risks. I mean, opening 3 of anything is going to cost not 3 times as much, but it's going to cost more than opening 1, obviously. So financial is certainly important. The site economics, unfortunately, too many times when people do a multi-site approach, they have a great store, a good store, and then another store that sucks up all the money they're making off the other 2. It's disappointing because you have to have the same rigor on every single location, on every single franchise. Another growth strategy, the last one I'll talk about, there's lots of other hybrids and models, but these are 3 predominant ones you'll find out there. Area development. And this has become very popular over the last several years because, again, from a franchisor's perspective, to support one area developer who's going to open up all the brand locations in a market is just a different approach from an infrastructure and support standpoint, marketing standpoint, than selling individual sites. And it's become very attractive to a number of franchise concepts. And so if you like Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, A&W, and you want to own one, unfortunately, it's not available. Unless you are willing to develop an area, that's their model. And so there are brands that you're very familiar with out there that are not available to the average consumer who might want to buy a franchise. Franchise operations is the backbone. Okay, all the selling and getting you up and running, getting you in the business, if you will. What is the backbone of the operation? What's supporting this? And most franchisees go into a franchise with little or no experience in that business. I mean, most people that open an Alpha Graphics are not printers. Most people that open a Subway aren't sandwich makers. I mean, so the operations are so critical. And the other point, and maybe Don will touch on this, is that a lot of times the franchisor ties a lot of the requirements of being a franchisee to the operating manual. So instead of putting everything in your franchise agreement says thou shalt, all the commandments and everything, right? It'll just say according to our franchise manual. Now, I could tell you over the 18 years how many franchisees I've talked to have never read, looked at, even considered the franchise manual in their purchase process, in their decision process. But I will tell you, it is absolutely critical to understand the backbone of the system that's going to be there to help you run this business that you know nothing about during your tenure with this organization. Okay, two basic platforms of franchise operations. One is there's a retail store. I mean, there's lots of hybrids out there, but basically, when you're thinking about franchise, you got a retail concept or you've got a service concept. The retail concept is certainly much more complex. I mean, how many of you knew Ace hardware stores were franchised? You see them out there, you think, it's a neat concept. Are they company owned? Radio Shack. I mean, there's so many concepts that the average person on the street doesn't realize that they're a franchise. It's a retail store. The level of complexity is exponential, and you just got to be prepared for that. Again, you think I'm going to open up a Quiznos. I mean, how many of you have ever had to choose a site for a 10-year period with all that implies? How many of you have ever negotiated a retail lease with a landlord that's huge? Right? I mean, these are not for the faint of heart. And most franchise prospects have never been involved in these types of activities. Well, let me tell you that the franchisor, in many cases, is not that involved in this either. In most cases, the franchisor says, you're responsible to pick a site, you're responsible to get a lease. That's a challenge that you just have to be prepared for and think about as you're looking at franchising. Service, much easier to get into, lower cost typically. And the good news for people that are thinking about franchise, there's lots more options than there were even 5 years ago. There's so many more great options. I mean, Kids Art. How many of you ever heard of Kids Art? Again, it's one of about 60 in the education sector. I mean, the education sector has been booming. I mean, heard of Huntington, Sylvan, some other good brands out there. Think about the other elements of operations. I'll just briefly, manuals. I said how critical it is to understand these manuals going into this. Information systems. How do you talk to the franchisor? Is there a good POS system? Is there a good data collection method within this organization, or are you just going to be out there on your own? You really need to understand the benchmarks in the industry and within the franchise. If you're in Baskin-Robbins, what's the average cost of goods? What's the average labor? You want to see what kind of systems they have for that. And then training. A lot of franchisors are outsourcing a lot of their training. You want to look and see, are they doing all the training in-house? How are they handling all of that? All right, franchisee system support. This is after the sale. How do they take care of franchisees? As John said, it's critically important to talk to franchisees before you ever make a decision about buying a franchise. It's probably the best place for information. And if the franchisor gives you some names of people to call, set that one aside. Go to their offering circular and pick out some names. I mean, randomly. Just pick up the phone and call franchisees. It's of everything that I've talked about here. The one thing you have that the franchisor doesn't is local influence. That's your trump card to play. You know the market better than they do because you live there. And that's something, don't underestimate the value of that. So make sure you have the right growth strategy and you align yourself with the right franchise concepts growth strategy. Understand these operational elements before you sign that franchise agreement, hopefully, and then understand the support components. How are they going to take care of you as a franchisee? And probably the most important in this context is determine what kind of relationship you're likely to have with this organization if you're going to be making this kind of investment. Or if you're thinking about launching a franchise concept, what kind of relationship do you want to have with your franchisees? Thank you.